It's October. Welcome to our Halloween episode. We'll be talking about its origins and how it evolved into what we know it as today. It goes much deeper than a dentist's nightmare. It's the time of year when the light and dark meet, the earth settles in for winter, the veil thins, and we honor our ancestors. Stick with us until the end of the video to learn different ways of honoring your loved ones. Let's start the conversation.
Hey, Mystics. If you're new here, welcome. If you already know us, welcome back. I'm Kai Bertrand.
I'm Lisa Stewart.
And I'm Susie Parker Goins. Welcome to the Mystic Mosaic Podcast. We're here to help clarify, illuminate, normalize, and encourage you as you develop your spiritual gifts so you can confidently build a sustainable lifestyle for you, your family, and even your career.
Here's our disclaimer. We are providing information to you to use as a launching point for your own spiritual journey. We are not giving free readings or medical advice. Information provided here is for educational purposes only. Happy Halloween, everyone. Let's talk about how it got started. Susie, would you lead the discussion?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. This is a topic about which I am a wee bit passionate. It's the information that I have is from the Great Britain area or European area. It was based in agrarian societies, and it's the festival of the final harvest. So this is that time of year people have the festivals to take stock of what it is they have, the strength, the agility, all of these festivals for the community joining together. It was a time also to take an inventory for what you have for your winter stores. They would bring in livestock either to winter out or to slaughter them to make sure people survived the winter months. And it's not just limited to a European celebration. Dios de los Muertos is one that is celebrated in Mexico, where families go out to their graves of their ancestors and they have picnics and they clean it up. I understand that it's in my research, I see that it's celebrated in so many other places. Kai, you're from Hawaii, and I don't know anything about those any celebrations you would have. What goes on there?
For Halloween, we don't actually have an actual day that we celebrate our dead because for us, even though they have passed away, they're still with us. They still are part of the family in our way. We can still speak to our loved ones even after they've passed. So for us, it's kind of an everyday thing. So Halloween for us is really the commercial version that we got from the US. When we became a state and all that. But yeah, the traditional Hawaiian stuff is that we honor our dead every day. We think about them every day.
Dios de los Muertos is not the only time they set up shrines for their families in Latino cultures. There was a theater I worked at in Dallas called No, I only went there, never hired me, but they had shrine set up, and it was more than just food or drink. There were cigars, there were pieces of clothing that they held dear. So incorporating that whole life and death cycle is missing from American culture. But it's important. But there are so many other traditions that have come through with this. Lisa, you know some stuff about that, right?
The traditions of Samhain, come from Scotland and Ireland, and a lot of this does come from Ireland. If you want to go trick or treating, right? The initial trick or treating aspect came from Ireland. They participated in what's called mumming and guising. Actually, 16th century Scotland, it's the precursor to trick or treating, where they would dress up. They would build big bonfires, of course, to remove negative energies from the land. Then they would dress themselves up, like by taking the ash from the bonfires and painting their faces black, so that way they could disguise themselves from negative energies that were roaming the land, looking to take possession of anybody, drag their asses to hell.
Yeah, that's another way that costuming came in. It was to fool the fae. It's like, for me, that seems like painting the supernatural into being kind of stupid, that they would be fooled by that, but, you believe what you can. It
Oh,
is
we're only
really
humans.
fascinating. I know.
Well,
No,
and this was a time when everyone was, superstition was king then.
true.
Everything that you learned from your neighbors and your friends and your family. And, we didn't have, most of the time you didn't have like a scientist or, someone studying certain things. You just kind of went with what you knew based on, what everybody told you. So
Yeah.
all this stuff is, a lot of it is based in superstition. I mean, it seems silly to us now
Mhm.
because, we've,
True.
developed in a lot of different ways, but back then that's all you had.
Yeah.
It was an explanation for natural occurrences, so you're right. Just like you said, Kai, it's what they had.
Folk tales, wives' tales, superstition.
Mm.
Yeah.
When they made lanterns, they would carve out turnips to do it, to walk around, to guide the souls over to the other side. So that was the first lantern they used, and then it evolved into pumpkins and then the jack-o'-lanterns. Jack-o'-lanterns have a really great story, and I'm sure Lisa can tell it better than I can. What's that story?
The story actually is about Stingy Jack, but going back just a little bit about turnips,
Oh,
turnips originated in Ireland and in Scotland as well, because what's interesting is that when it came over to America, that's when we started using pumpkins. The Native Americans actually introduced pumpkins into our lives. Even though turnips were readily available as root vegetables, what was interesting about that is pumpkins are easier to carve. And of course, they're larger. Who doesn't want a nice large jack-o'-lantern sitting in their window? I know. I've been known to carve 50 pumpkins at once. Turnips were the first root veggie to be carved before pumpkins. Stingy Jack, it's another Irish tale. Stingy Jack had a reputation as a deceiver and a manipulator. One day, the devil came to call on Jack to see if Jack lived up to his vile reputation. Jack asked the devil to let him drink ale before he departed to hell. Satan asked Jack to pay for the ale. Jack didn't have any money because Jack's a manipulator, right? So Jack convinced the devil to convert into a silver coin with which to pay the bartender and then change back again when he's not looking. Shrewdly, Jack stuck the now transmogrified coin into his pocket, and his pocket also had a crucifix, preventing Satan from turning back. Now, this coerced Satan to agree to Jack in a demand, and the demand was in exchange for freedom, he had to spare Jack's life for 10 years. 10 years later, Jack naturally finds himself once again in the presence of the devil. Jack happened upon Satan in the same setting as before and seemingly accepted that it was his time to go to hell for good. Satan's preparing Jack trips back to hell, but Jack asked for one more favor. He asked if he could climb up a tree to get an apple. Satan's like, what could go wrong? Jack climbs up the apple tree. Satan's coming up after him. Jack comes back down. Unbeknownst to Satan, the entire tree and around the tree are crucifixes that were created by all the branches of the tree. Devil, once again, is like, okay, what do you want, Jack? Jack's like, I want that you never take my soul, even upon death, never take my soul. So Satan agrees. Okay, fine, Jack. I won't take your soul. Well, Jack eventually dies. Heaven rejects him. So Jack goes to hell and he's like, yo, Satan, buddy, you let me in? The devil now, of course, had to honor the original agreement to never take his soul. So Jack was doomed to roam the earth between the planes. Satan mockingly tosses him a coal of burning embers to light his way for the rest of his life. Jack took his carved turnip, put the ember in the turnip, which was his favorite food, and endlessly wandered the earth. He has now become Jack of the Lantern or Jack-o'-lantern.
So now I retract my statement that the Fae are stupid. Yes. The devil nuked him. Okay.
Yeah, that was a gotcha.
Very much so. Cool. So yeah.
Fun stories. So yeah, I've been known to carve 50 pumpkins. I've also been known to carve elaborate pumpkins. I remember actually carving Jack Nicholson's face as the Joker. It took me probably about 10 hours to actually give it the contours and construct of. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. That was the last one I did.
So one more, don't waste the food. When you have one of those jack-o'-lanterns beautifully done, take the pictures, but then after the holiday, after the festival, put it out where animals can eat from it. I think that's a
Absolutely.
lovely way to honor. Yeah, yeah. I'd find so many of them in the street, just like throw them out to the woods so you can honor those ancestors there too.
Let me just share a quick story. Andrew and I, when we lived in the East Coast and we would carve like 5 or 6 jack-o'-lanterns, some of them we wouldn't carve. So the pumpkins that stayed on the porch in North Carolina would stay well formed until January. So January 1st, we'd have what's called a pumpkin rolling contest. We had a very steep driveway. So we'd take all the pumpkins top of the driveway and we'd take movies and we'd roll them down like bowling balls into, because we had a big wooded area behind the house. So they would roll, they would jump and pop into the forest for the animals. So yeah,
Oh, that's nice.
that was a fun tradition.
Cool. So we have a lot of these traditions that we've carried over from Europe into America. And once I got into America, of course, it gets to morph even more. So we had some of the trick or treating came about, it seems, as a replacement for what they call prank nights, mischief nights. Lisa, in Detroit, what did they call them?
So in Michigan, right, we had Devil's Night, which was this October
Devils.
30th. And then we had trick or treating on Halloween, which was October 31st. So yeah,
So
in in Detroit, Devil's Night, you batten down the hatches, because what they love to do, and I think they might still like doing this, is overturning cars and lighting them on fire.
okay, so from drunk history, you can find the story about how this woman got fed up with prank night, and she sent out to the community that the teenagers, of course, in the 20s and 30s, she makes it sound really like the teenagers are out of hand. We need to do something fun, but that was what she was doing, was redirecting. So that's how these harvest festivals in cities started happening, those parties and the trick or treating. It was to shift away from that prank night. It's not exclusively about trick or treating. Like we said, in Europe, it was about the end of the harvest season. And then, and in winter, you look and see what worked for you and then plan for what can happen in the spring. It's also a time, because it's so dark, we're talking northern hemisphere, because the days get shorter, the nights get longer, you get to sit and consider ancestors.
Halloween, I've always loved it. And I've always said it's the only day I get to be myself, which now that I've come out of the spiritual broom closet, it just gets to highlight more of me. So I love that. And I love the idea of honoring our ancestors during this time as well. It's not a practice I grew up with, but it's certainly one that I can get behind immediately in this day and age. Yeah, I love the commercialization of Halloween. I love the fact that I could choose my costume and go trick-or-treating for candy. For me now, it's a matter of honoring the cycles of life, honoring the cycles of the moon, honoring the cycles of life and death, and the fact that we do get to participate in honoring our ancestors, talking to our ancestors each and every day. There's something that I want to share with everybody, and that is, when your loved one has passed and people say, oh, well, you'll always remember them in your heart. If they're with you, it's not just theory. They're standing right next to you. That's what I love about. If you walk away knowing nothing, I want you to walk away knowing that. If you want to talk to your late father, call him. He'll just show up right next to you, for the most part.
Many folks do honor their ancestors, and there are simple things you can do as well as elaborate ones. List of suggestions, we'll put that at the end of the episode. But remember that whatever you do, make it your own, whether it's an offering on a shelf of something that reminds you of your ancestor, or a beverage or some food. You could do a dumb supper, which is more elaborate, in which you set a plate, everybody walks in quietly. No, everyone walks in without speaking. The meal is had without speaking, then everyone walks out without speaking.
Not in my family. We'd set a place for them right there. We'd talk smack about them as they were sitting at the table. Things don't change. I could
I
not be,
love that.
I couldn't be quiet during dinner.
I love that take. It's so much more, I don't know. Again, make it your own. Or you
Mhm.
can set up some kind of shrine. Anything that helps you to remember the ancestors you want to remember with love and compassion and all that. If we talk about ancestors, um, how do they show up? I mean, for some of us, they show up as ghosts or spirits. That's not the same as a poltergeist, though, right?
It can be.
Yeah.
Guess I'm not
Um,
proud for this part.
so just as, clarification for our audience, we've got ghosts, which are also the same as echoes, and we have our spirits, and then we have poltergeist. But from what I understand, poltergeist is different in that
Yeah.
it's been my experience that when things fly off the shelf and things like that start swirling around you, it may not be an entity. It may be your own psychokinetic ability that's allowing things to move in the room around you. Yeah. Yeah. There was a story about a woman who was having difficulty with her teenage daughter. So she, you know, bent down on both her knees next to her bed and was praying to God really hard about, how do I get my teenage daughter to listen to me? How do I get my teenage daughter to listen to me? And suddenly things in the teenage daughter's room starting to fly around. And she had a little brief consultation with a medium who said, I think that was you. In any case, what's really interesting also about spirits and ghosts is that ghosts being echoes, and Kai, I'm sure you can weigh in on this, but ghosts and echoes are really remnants of visual or sounds that take place on a loop. So for instance, when I walked into a haunted house, I could see a ghost walking back and forth, but the ghost was happening at a set time and date. So there's a very famous story about a little dog in Edinburgh that at 1 o'clock, when the bells chime, the dog is seen running to his master's grave so that he can get fed. It's a very famous story. You can look it up. It's fascinating. And so you have to wonder, is it the dog's echo, or is it really the dog's spirit?
Yeah, this
Oh,
is
I read
go ahead, Susie.
Okay, I read a series of book by a woman named Mary Summerrain, and she would go and check these out. And the phrase that I learned about it, the phrase that I'd learned to attach to it was a psychic imprint, but it was on repeat. It wasn't exactly the spirit or the soul of the being of the woman. There was this woman who would come down the stairs and go to the window, wait for her lover,
Mhm.
and all that. But
Mhm.
that's fascinating. It's
That
not
sounds
that I
like
expected it to happen in one spot,
yeah,
but an
I think
echo
it
sounds
probably,
right.
yeah, it does. They sound very, very similar. Kai?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's essentially the same thing. It's that, that it's almost like a piece of energy that's stuck on a loop, like you said. So
Mhm.
it is a psychic imprint is what it is, where this piece of energy keeps repeating over and over and over and over. And a lot of times, like paranormal investigators love this kind of stuff because it is repeatable. They can capture it over and over and over again and say, yes, there is definitely something here that doesn't make sense. And so they like to do that. And then then you go into the next thing where you can get into spirits, but there are some ghosts, and I guess this is where we have some overlap in terminology, depending on what you're doing and how technical you want to be about it, because there are ghosts or spirits that are cognizant, meaning they can follow directions. So if you have a ball on the floor and it will tell you, you say, hey, if you want to prove that you're here, move that ball or move that chair or
Mhm.
whatever, and then it will actually perform an action, then you understand that it is not just an echo. It is not a psychic imprint of that time and place. It is an actual cognizant spirit, a cognizant energy.
It's
And
interactive.
yeah,
Static. Yeah.
yeah. And then the poltergeist thing, there's a couple different ways of looking at it. It could be psychokinetic energy from a living person that's there, but it could also be um, a very super active cognizant ghost and or an entity of some kind. So it just depends. And this is a whole nother episode because we're getting into paranormal investigation kind of stuff here. But
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a difference between these things. For most people, they wouldn't recognize it. It's just like, oh my God, what is that? But you know, there if you can kind of keep your panic mode down for a bit, you know, you can kind of discern what is what, because a psychic imprint is not dangerous because
Right.
it's just it's a loop. It's like a, you know, like a film thing that's stuck over and over. It can't hurt you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you clear that? Can you
Yes.
clear a psychic loop?
Yes.
Good to know.
Yeah, because it's just energy that just needs to be released, you know, because it was created by such strong intention at the time that it can't help but continue what it's doing. But yeah, those things can be broken.
I've also learned through my life that you can create a psychic imprint while you're still alive. So you can leave a room and it can still remain for years later.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and that's how they get started. They are in psychic imprint of a being that was alive.
Right.
They've invested so much energy in it while they were alive that it continues after they've passed.
Right. But the distinction that I wanted to make was that I'm sure I've left psychic imprints in my bedroom as a teenager because teenagers are, you know, we're full of woe anyway and turmoil. So I can only imagine that, you know, every kid leaves a psychic imprint and moves on into another town, but that imprint is still there and they're still alive.
Well, everybody leaves psychic imprints on whatever homes that they've lived in, which is why, you know, part of the thing I do is I clear houses when people are buying new places. I'm like, you know, you never want to move into a house before you've had it energetically cleared because you don't know what's been left behind.
No, that's a good point.
Feels to me that psychic imprints can be derived from trauma. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's not the only thing, but, you know, we're talking about the dog, the woman, you know, you being a teenager, it seems to me that's another way that trauma imprints on, well, everything.
Yeah, the ones that the experiences that we have that are the most jarring one way or another do leave the most apparent imprints on a location and on the things in the location. So, I mean, if you have a house that's like always happy and full of love or whatever, you walk in the door, you feel that. It's in everything. It's you know, it permeates. It's from the curtains down to the rug. You feel it. But if it's a house that's very trauma oriented, like, you know, there's a lot of abuse, so there's a lot of, you know, just a lot of angst going on in the house, a lot of anger. You feel that too because it's in everything. That energy gets infused in everything.
Like smoke. Yeah.
I mean, it's like in the furniture, I mean, everything you touch, everything you walk by is infused with that energy.
Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to clarify was the ability to know that there's life beyond life and that there is this thing called life review. And that's the processing that we keep referring to. So that when people do get stuck, I think a lot of it is fear-based because it comes from Christianity or Catholicism. And I just wanted to kind of bring that to light so that people know that there is life beyond life and so much to look forward to.
There are a lot of books. I know in the 90s came out a couple of books that I was aware of by Daniel Brinkley and Betty J. Eady, and they had those near-death experiences. And you're right, there is a spectrum. Betty J. close person, no, but Betty J. Eady said that there was only one life that we all had, and that was it. And then Daniel Brinkley, he was one of the guys who got hit by lightning several times. His life review actually literally changed his life. And there are some more video out there listening to him. He's like this nice Southern gentleman talking about how he died, saw God and all that stuff. But he found out in his review that there were multiple lifetimes. But so to know that your life review, your life processing is catered. It's informed by your beliefs and your experience. It's fascinating.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's absolutely everything that happens is based on your perception, your belief system, your cosmology. So
Mhm.
what fascinates me about the near-death experience recountings is that, yeah, they are very different. Like one guy talked about how he, he died, and instead of going to heaven like everybody claims, it's like he actually went to hell.
Mhm.
He saw hell, his version of hell,
Mhm.
and he was just like, oh my gosh, and basically whoever was with him at the time was like, now's your chance
Mhm.
to change your path, or this is where you're going to end up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how our cosmology shapes all that stuff,
Mhm.
because we have to, they speak to us in ways that um coincide with our perceptions.
Mhm.
Like it's hard to grasp something that you don't perceive, that you don't have any frame of reference for. So it's interesting how all the NDEs are based on the belief system of the person experiencing the NDE.
So when a soul goes through their life process, their life review, they can ascend or not. I mean, I had experience with my mom in which she showed up. She died when I was 13, and it was like, I don't know, 30, almost 40 years later, and I was with my son. We had just moved up here, and she showed up. I saw her figure in a chair that said, "Everything's going to be all right." Now we're talking 26 years ago, so I didn't know what she was talking about, but I haven't seen her since. So, I
I
don't
love
know if
that.
she's a guide or what, but that's one of my ghost stories. Since we're on Halloween, I want to keep going with the ghost stories now. Can we flip the spooky switch now?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
you all have so many stories. So I'm going to sit back. I don't have popcorn with me. I want to listen.
Okay. Speaking of popcorn, I got a good one for you, right? So this one happened back when I was in college, and a guy and I were walking back to my dorm, and after dinner, it was an interesting experience because the campus was dark, and suddenly I felt this tugging, like something was tugging my heart and pulling me towards the dorm. I wasn't saying anything about that, and suddenly I heard him say, I feel like something is repelling me from the dorm. And I'm like, it's funny you should say that. I feel something's pulling me towards the dorm. So we enter the dorm, get to my hall, and down the hall, I see this specter, and it's floating probably about 4 or 5 feet above the floor. And it's probably this tall, right? It's not very
Oh,
big. And the look on its face was just like, and I'm like, I don't say anything because I haven't really shared my talents with people around me because, I look at him and he looks at me and he's like, did you see that? And I'm like, I did see that. I'm not sure if you saw that. And he's like, yeah, the specter, the spirit slides right into my room. And I'm like, oh shit, this isn't going to be fun. So, with great trepidation, I open the door and there's stuff flying around. So I was famous for popping popcorn and letting it sit for 2 or 3 days because I would take my time munching on it. And of course, my roommate loved old popcorn as well. So that's another story. But as we're standing in my room, we start speaking to this thing. This thing starts speaking to us. He was getting different messages than I was getting, but I'm still kind of bemused by the popcorn that's kind of popping in the bowl. And I'm like, what the hell? Well, things started to get very emotional in the room. On the other side of the wall in my dorm, I had, one of those fuse switch boxes. That thing pops and it blows and it blackens the entire dorm. And I'm like, uh-oh. Of course, commotion goes on in the dorm. We're all grabbing for our flashlights, and I go out into the hall, and an RA walks down, opens up the fuse box, and says, in the entire history of the university, this has never happened before. And I'm like, okay. I think that altercation with the spirit in my room is what kind of just blackened the whole dorm out. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah, something was upset that, that the gentleman was in the women's dorm
Yeah.
and felt like he should not have been there. And
It's interesting that you say that because it was an all women's dorm and the name of the dorm was featured after a woman who founded it. I don't want to give away names because I don't want to create hysteria, but yeah, it's quite possible that she was hanging out with us that night.
yeah, or it could have been like an old dorm matron or something like that.
Mhm.
I mean, if the college has been there a really long time, in the beginning that they did have like dorm mothers,
Yeah.
women who actually were there to make sure that none of these untoward things happened. So it could have been like someone like that as well.
If I only had listened to her then, I wouldn't have wasted the 10 years.
Well, there's always stories about theater ghosts too. So someplace that's been established. I know we had up here there was our historic theater that was being renovated. And when a set of seats went out, then the theater ghost was gone. It evaporated. Not I don't know if it ever caused trouble so much. There was a theater I worked at in Granbury, and they had one, and there was some. There's it seems to be a lot of these stories around it that he ran in, and he was supposed to be somebody's lover or whatever, and then blah 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 and stuff like that. And not having been there for years, I don't know if he's still there. I don't know if every ghost is scary though. There was some ghosts who just kind of like sit in the back and go, "Hey, sup?" And that was another theater I worked at in Dallas. Kai, I'm sure you have a varied experience with ghosts. What are some of your favorite stories?
I don't know. I've had um, lots of different ghost stories, and um, trying to think of one that is, well, that's the thing. I don't actually have a lot of ghost stories. I actually have more demon stories than ghost stories.
Of
Oh,
course you would.
But well, okay, so here's a ghost story that I haven't told you guys. I had a student who was um she was actually taking Reiki from me, and we were talking one day, and she said, "Oh, I had this really weird thing where the cemetery that I live near, I was walking by and it was calling so I heard something call my name because I was walking by, there was no one around." She goes, "But every time I walk past there, something says my name." And I told her, I was like, "You didn't answer, did you?" And she's like, "No, because I couldn't see anybody that I was talking to." So yeah, I didn't answer, but every time I walk by there, something says my name. And I said, "Good." Because, going back to the imprint, the psychic imprint versus a cognizant spirit, that it's like if they recognize you enough to know your name, that's not good.
Ooh.
So I told her, I said, and I was like, "First off, what the heck are you doing in a graveyard?" She's like just hanging out there. And I'm like, "Sweetie, that's where spirits hang out. The dead that aren't ready to go, they will often go hang out with the last place their bodies are. So graveyards are always busy. They're always busy." And
okay.
I was like, "Don't go hang out in graveyards
That's
unless there's
funny.
this is a purpose, like you want to see ghosts or something, then fine. But other than that, don't hang out in there. It's not a park." Like,
I used to hang out in cemeteries all the time when I was a kid. They were quiet.
I just, but I told her, I said, "But you're sensitive to stuff." I said, "So don't." And the fact that it actually knows your name, whatever is there, knows your name.
Kai, that's not a ghost story.
Yeah,
That's a demon story. We're talking about ghost stories. That's
I was
for
like,
another episode.
I'm like, "Don't answer." Um, so, and the other thing is, I was actually driving by a cemetery. It's a pretty big cemetery here, down near Tacoma, and I was just stopping at the stoplight. It was like in the afternoon. It's probably about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The sun was in my eyes, and I looked to the side, and I could actually see all the ghosts walking already, during the day, and I was like, "Ooh." So
Cool.
yeah,
Ooh.
Very cool.
that's my ghost stories.
So there's a cemetery near me, and you're supposed to be able to. I haven't been there because I'm a chicken, but supposedly they have lots of orbs and um energy orbs, spirit orbs, and other spirits there. And then see, I don't see them as demons. I've not had those experiences to make me think, oh, there's something to be afraid of outside of my, flashlight under the face, kind of ooh, spooky sort of thing. So, ooh, what are the other ways to, Lisa, did you have something first?
Oh, I can call my spirit kitties back. So yeah, my pets, they come back as ghosts and spirits and climb all over me. And I was just going to say I had a couple of ghost stories from the retail brick and mortar that I had. I had a ghost that frequented the space in there, and he always looked out for me, which was really great. And I think I shared that in one of the other episodes. But yeah, I could smell a wafting of musk cologne walk by, and I'm like in the studio or in the shop alone. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And it was basically his way of saying, welcome. I like what you're doing here. I'll be here if you need me. And I'm like, okay. And yeah, as a quick aside, I believe that particular spirit also informed me that something was going down in my own shop, because I was working in the back and I had Andrew come in, and Andrew was talking to a couple of young chaps. And these chaps didn't know I was back there, and I was back there sewing. I think I was hand stitching, and that can be a very quiet process. And they were asking questions that aren't your ordinary run of the line consumer questions. And I'm like, uh-oh, and the hairs in the back of my neck stood up. So I quietly got out of my chair, put my project down, grabbed a hammer, and then quietly moved out into the shop. And I'm watching these two boys corner my husband. And I'm like, oh, hell no. And they looked at me, and I had the hammer in my hand, and I said, can I help you? They got the hell out of there so fast. And I'm like, thank you, spirit. Whoever you were alerted me that things were about to get nasty. And I'm like, not while I'm here. So yeah, that was pretty damn scary. But yeah, that's when spirits come to help. And I love that.
Yeah, because it doesn't always have to be spooky or scary or anything like that. Sometimes they're very helpful, and they'll step up it to help you in any way they can. So yeah, we don't want to say that just because you have spirit activity that it's necessarily bad.
Right.
For me though, personally, like I don't want anything in my house. I don't want, and I just nope, no thank you.
Yeah.
But sometimes they can be helpful, and well, and they can be, sometimes they just want to ask for help. Like for instance, one of my ghost stories is that I sometimes when I have done Reiki shares with a group, I will sometimes I open up all my abilities, including the mediumistic ones, just so I can get an idea of what's happening with the client that's on the table, make sure I cover all my bases, sort of thing. And then inevitably ghosts will show up, and some of them will they'll say, we're lost and we're trying to get to the other side, but we don't know how to do that. And so I'll open a door, and they'll just pass through, and while they're going, they're like, bye, thank you. I was just like, yeah. And then there was one guy who I had seen this ghost, and he just came up to me, and he started grumbling about and I was like, what do you want? Why are you grumbling? And he was just mad that he was dead, because he was going to be, his plan was he's going to be a doctor, and now that he was dead, he couldn't be. So he was mad about that, all the things I would have done, all the people I would have saved, blah blah blah. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but that wasn't your master plan. we all decide who and what we're going to do, how we're going to die, when we're going to die before we even get here. And so this was, a decision that you made long before you got here. You just don't remember it because you haven't crossed completely over where all that information will then become available to you. And so I said, bottom line is you're dead. I understand that you wanted to be a doctor and maybe you might have been a good one, but that's not what your plan was. And, after that, he was like, oh, okay. And then so I opened the door for him and he passed through. And sometimes that's all it takes to help someone cross over is to just listen to what they have to say. And, and most of the time they'll go ahead and go. And which is why I would say that, you don't necessarily have to be someone like me to do that. So if you have ghosts in your house or something like that, and you get the sense that they want to move on, but they can't for whatever reason, like they can't find their way, they feel like they're lost, see if you can help them open a door to the, to the light, to the source so that they can pass through. And then, then you won't have a ghost in your house anymore.
So can anybody just open a door, Kai?
Yeah,
if they
because
don't-
it's based on intention. So if you intend, so the way I have taught people to do it in the past is I will say, okay, you intend for them to see a door open in front of them that will take them back to source. And once they pass through, the door closes.
And you don't have to be a medium or a shaman to do this.
No. The difference is if you're a medium or a shaman, you can actually witness these things. You can actually see these things. You can actually feel these things. But if you're sensitive to energy anyway, you can actually feel the door open. You can feel them step through and you can feel the door close. So if you have some sensitivity, it's something that anybody can do if you're willing to do it. Right. I mean, a lot of people, like, they sense a ghost and they're gone, right? They're like, oh no.
Yep.
But if you're okay with it and it doesn't bother you, then, and if you're willing to help out in that way, then yeah, anybody can do it.
And that's where the term psychopomp comes in, right?
Yeah, when I was opening up to mediumship, I would drive along the river road and I could see all these folks. It's like, hey, look, there's light. Good for that. So it wasn't a door per se, but it was definitely intention to help these folks pass over.
There's your ghost story, Susie.
Yeah. I had some, but I don't have as many demon stories. See, guys out there going, I don't know what it was you were saying, that you see the ghosts and you see the spirits, and you want to separate from them. Forgot what the lead in was. Damn it. But me, I see ghosts and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And want to talk to them, but separation is okay. I know guys, they're going, nope, not doing it.
No. I remember one day Andrew and I were in a hotel. We were visiting his parents and we decided we would stay in one of the chain motels. And I'm in the bathroom blow drying my hair and I look over and I said, oh, hi, how are you? And it was a little girl, a little ghost spirit. She was just standing there and I saw her clear as day. She had like sandy brown hair, shoulder length. She had a blue dress on with a big satin ribbon around and she was holding a teddy bear. And I'm like, oh, okay, nice to see you. So I finish my hair. I go back out into the big room. Like, Andrew, we have a little spirit girl ghost that's hanging out with us. I hope you're okay with that. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, it was just quick like that. And another thing that I just kind of want to clarify for everyone is don't gaslight yourself out of thinking that you didn't see something. If you saw something, you saw something. Even if it was for an instant, you saw it.
Yeah, and more importantly, pay attention to how you feel around what you saw.
Exactly.
The reason I say that is because a lot of times demons will actually disguise themselves as cute little girls with teddy bears to, undermine what you're trying to do. It's their way of, making you discount them and, making you relax and therefore kind of prepping you for whatever they want to do. So pay attention to not just what you see, but how you feel around them. So so in other words, like if what you feel doesn't match what you're seeing, it's hinky, and pay attention to it, because
Yeah.
they can show up in any number of guises.
Mhm.
And a lot of them will be to kind of put you at ease, like, oh, it's nothing. And then, yeah, it's actually really something.
So basically what you're telling me, Kai, is that I have more demon stories than I do ghost stories.
Well, no, I mean, it's entirely possible that what you saw was an actual little girl. I mean, because there are times when I've seen kids and that they were actual kids.
Mhm.
And that's fine, because like I said, you can tell by how you feel. Like if you get like a sense of like like, in other words, like you see that and it feels like that, then that's fine. But if
Mhm.
you see that but you feel like something else, then you need to be suspicious about it.
Mhm.
But yeah, a lot of times people will say, oh yeah, I saw this little girl, and I'm like, no, it was not a
Yeah.
no, because that's what they
Yeah,
do.
me going in for a handshake, I'd like to envision myself as being one of those badass super spies going, "Hi, how you doing?" And throw him over and knock him on the head and move on. We'll see if that ever happens. Wait till we go to New Orleans.
Practice your roundhouse kick, Susie.
I have to get my legs up. Okay. Oh, I could probably just talk him to death. I don't know.
Just send Mama G after him.
Like, hiya!
Oh, yeah. That's right.
No, but yeah, no, I just, you have to pay attention to, because it's, you can't always trust your eyes, because like I said, they can
Right.
change.
Mhm.
And so
Well,
you
that's
have to
good to
pay
know.
attention to stuff.
That's good to know. I'll remember that, and I won't be so
Oh,
amiable to little ghost girls who show up saying hi.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes they'll do that. Like they do this little harmless thing, like, um, I like to watch ghost hunters kind of stuff do their thing, right? Paranormal investigators. And sometimes they'll do this thing where like, oh look, like it's moving a ball. Let's play with the ball. And I'm thinking, if you could actually see what is actually tossing the ball at you, you would not be so casual about it.
You'd be running out of the house screaming like little girls. Let's face it.
Yeah, because I'm just like, dude, if you could see what the heck is kicking the ball back at you, you would pee your pants and run. Yeah, pretty much. Like you'd be screaming for your mama if you saw what was at the other end of that hallway. I was like,
Wait till that ball comes zooming at your head, along with a few other things.
yeah, I mean, which is why sometimes I like watching those things, because they're they're there with their cameras. We can't find anything. I don't see anything, and I'm like, dude, if you could see what's standing right in front of you, yeah.
One day we need to have you do those reaction videos, Kai, because I as a practicing shaman, I would love to be able to tune in to see what you're saying, because there are times when I saw things and you validated for me and I'm like, oh shit, that's some scary stuff. Very scary stuff.
ooh.
All
So
right, so speaking of scary stuff, like let's just get into it, and like how to tell if you have ghosts. So yeah, that is kind of my specialty, and I would say that there's lots of different ways you can tell. I would say that there's a list of standard things that you can look for, or that you may come across, such as hearing voices. You might be seeing things out of the corner of your eye, footsteps, weird noises, knocking. If you have a pet, like your pet will be staring at nothing, or dogs are especially sensitive. Like they will literally just stand still and bark at nothing, like bark like crazy, not just yip yip, but like
mhm.
crazy
Mhm.
barking at nothing. And that is an indication of something. So pay attention for that kind of stuff. And then also, pay
Okay.
attention to your own body. Yeah, because I mean, like if you get the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, or the hair on your arm is standing up, or you just all of a sudden you feel cold, like, it could be the middle of summer and you were sweating 5 minutes ago and now you're freezing. It's like there's something wrong. Those are the things that you need to pay attention to. And if you're interested in ways to discover if you have ghosts in your house, feel free to check out my book. Think When Things Go Bump in the Night, How to Tell If Your House is Haunted. You can find it on Amazon. You can click on the link in the description below to get your copy, to tell you how to decide, all the factors to let you know if you actually have ghosts in your house and what to do about it. Because I think a lot of people were like, oh yeah, that's a ghost, that's a ghost. And then you go, okay, what do I do? And people go, I don't know. So in the book, I actually tell you, like, these are your options. These are the things you look for. If you're going to do a paranormal investigation, these are the kind of people you want to work with. If you want to try to do it yourself, this is how you do it. And when and at what point you decide, maybe I really can't do this myself and I need to call in a professional. It tells you what and when and all that kind of stuff. And it's actually, and I think I've made it easy to read. But yeah, it'll give you at least a heads up into what you're looking at, what your options are, and where you could go for help if you need it.
I would attest to that. It's a great read. It's a very grounded, down to earth read. So you make it really fun, with your style of vernacular and personality infused right in there. I was able to mow through the book pretty quickly, running around, trying to do a house blessing, realized I had screwed things up. So then, of course, I had to call you to come in and clear things out for me. So thank you, Kai. Appreciate it.
You are welcome. Yeah, you got to watch out for those house blessings, man. It's like if you do them wrong, you could end up trapping something in your house, which you don't want.
Yeah, I think at which point you said that I had awoken a couple of things. And I'm like, oh, yeah, those things in the closet. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Susie.
so we could do a really lame lead in. So after you call the things in from the closet, how do you honor them? Let's not do that.
They're not your ancestors, Susie.
That would be like, okay, let's go back to talking about the nice ghosts and about the ways. Here are our suggestions for honoring your beloved dead. So the first thing is you can do offerings on an altar, such as liquor or clothing, like Susie had mentioned about the place that she worked or that she was, and of course food, anything that you think that they would enjoy on a little altar for them is great.
The
What else?
altars don't have to be elaborate. They don't have to be elaborate. I've got my dragon altar sitting in my windowsill because that's the only place I can put things. If you've got a grandmother who likes cooking, or sorry, if you have an ancestor who appreciated cooking, then you can put something else up on the windowsill, just things that they appreciate. It doesn't have to be huge.
Yeah, or even on top of a credenza or something, a dedicated space. Yeah, something as simple as that. Absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
got their intention imbued in it. Your intention is to honor them. Great.
yeah, so it could be like, you could put their watch up there, their baseball cap, favorite t-shirts, favorite necklace, favorite earrings, like something, it doesn't have to be like this big, huge thing. It can just be this small thing. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be their thing. It just has to be something that is representative of or honoring them.
Right.
So,
so if the ancestor loved making cookies, I would make that particular cookie or her cookie recipe, place the cookie up on the shelf as a thank you and as an honor for their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
And as the nights get longer, you can start to tell stories that you remember about the ancestors. And now all of my stories are out of my head, so I don't have any that I can tell. But like my grandmother's laugh was very particular. So, and my sister, my younger sister, will tell me all kinds of stories about our ancestors. She's researched them a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of it is just like talk about your favorite memories of them. Like,
Mhm.
one of my favorite memories from my godmother is that when I was little, when we used to go to McDonald's, I was one of those kids who like you had to name things precisely. I'm still that way. So for instance, I would say, we're going to get a fillet of fish, right? And she'd say, no, it's a fish fillet. I said, no, it is fillet of fish.
Following the McDonald's brand, brought to you by Kyber Trend.
It's a fish fillet. I was like, it is no, it is fillet of fish. And so so she would enjoy just like egging me on this, right? Because she's just messing with me. But that's like one of my favorite memories of her. So every single time, if I get anywhere near a McDonald's or somebody mentions a fillet of fish, that's what I think of. So it's like that's a way of honoring her, and I'm sure she would have, I mean, even now, I can hear her laughing her ass off about it because it was a silly thing, but it was like really important to us. And we had the discussion every single time we had an opportunity. Every time.
Oh my God, I remember when from my grandmother now, there was a bunch of us at some sort of holiday dinner she would cook. And when we misbehaved, she would say, I'm going to die and leave you all my silver. So you have to die polishing it. So that kept me on the straight and narrow so much.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
And I passed all that on to my younger sister. She can have
So she will die polishing all that stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
That's
another
great.
way you can honor your ancestors is enjoy their favorite food and beverages in their honor. So if grandpa like a particular brand of scotch or something, like have a couple of fingers on him, for him. And
or setting it up on your altar too. You can set that up on the altar. I don't drink, so I would just set it up there out of reach of the dog.
Yeah, yes. But I mean, like, say if it's like, you're trying to honor like, your son or your brother or your cousin or something, and their favorite food was a corn dog, like have a corn dog and just say, hey, I'm eating one of these and thinking of you. It's like that's honoring them as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I have a couple of late kitties that I'd like to honor, and I would like to create little tiny shrines for them to put like the little collars in and photos of them. And I'd like to kind of integrate some IoT in there. So that way, if I press something, something else would light up. And so I'd like have these little shrines that are wall hangings to put in my foyer. I think would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Ooh,
that's a
yeah,
good
like
idea.
Although
yeah,
I'm
we
not,
put pictures up in our hallway. That could be that gallery. That's
yeah,
another way
yeah, but I
to
am
honor
not eating
them.
their cat food and honoring of them. So sorry, guys, not happening. Although I will have a fillet of fish.
Oh my
Captain
gosh.
Splatter.
Oh, I'm going so many different places with that. Not appropriate.
Yikes.
Susie went off the deep end. Just my style.
All right, so another way we can honor our ancestors is write a letter to them and then burn it. That's a way to get things over to them. You can do that
Through flame and
one
through
of,
smoke.
yeah, one of the traditions that we actually have in Hawaii is that if you want to honor someone, you take a flower lei and you throw it in the ocean. You'll take it to the beach or the favorite spot that they like to be. So if, say for instance, if it was your dad and he liked to fish, you would take some leis out to his favorite fishing spot and you throw some flowers out there for him, and the beach, or sometimes depending on what's happening, you could actually like have people take it out in a canoe and, toss it in the water for you out there. Yeah, so that's one of our traditions. Another tradition that you could do with water if you wanted to is to do a lantern on the water. Something that is environmentally friendly, of course, be responsible about the environment. But yeah, a lot of Asian cultures will do that. They'll float little candles and just let it roll down the river or whatever in honor of their loved ones.
Yeah, so using your intention, you can honor them however you want. Sometimes ancestor shows up in dreams. If you want to encourage that connection, you can use meditation. That's that time where you sit quietly and you breathe and you ground, and you can have the conversations with your ancestors there, ask them questions, find out how they impacted you. I do have a meditation of that of an ancestor, calling in your ancestors, on my website at Blue Lightning Healing, and so you can search it and find it there. It's really, sometimes they can be very reassuring. I would say oftentimes they are.
Until they show up at
So,
Thanksgiving and tell you that you're cooking dinner wrong.
and that's where boundaries are important too.
So true.
Yes. Here's your gin on your altar. Go take that. Go. Maybe not.
Drink your
Maybe
booze and get out of here.
Yeah. Closing time. Last call. We've covered Samhain and Halloween today. Hopefully, what we've talked about gives you things to look for and to consider. What are your Halloween traditions? Drop them in the comments below. Join us again for another episode where we cover more interesting topics. Meanwhile, consider picking up Kai's book on Amazon, When Things Go Bump in the Night. Go to Blue Lightning Healing and listen to all of Susie's podcasts, and then also consider picking up my new 2023 digital calendar that includes moon phase planning for your business or for your personal life at cocreatemagic.com.
You've been watching the Halloween episode of the Mystic Mosaic podcast. Hit the like button if you found the episode helpful. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified when we upload another video. It helps the algorithm to share this episode with people who want to learn more about this topic. Look for a new episode from us every Thursday. Thanks for watching.
Until next time, happy Halloween.
Ooh.